Is Grayson Rodriguez ready to take the step to be an ace? One of the most hyped pitching prospects in the last decade, Rodriguez has all the talent in the world, and we've seen that fully on display. Now, the road in the majors has been a bit bumpy at times, but in 2024, Rodriguez began to put it together before, unfortunately, a lat strain shut down his season a bit early. Made his last start on July 31st. After that, had the lat strain, and his season ended after just 116 and 2/3 innings. Now, the results were there. Rodriguez had a 3.86 ERA and a 1.24 whip. He struck out 26.5% of hitters while walking just 7.3% of batters. This was major improvement from what we had seen in his major league debut in 2023. While he pitched 122 innings with the Orioles in 2023, and the results were good, there was some major steps in the right direction for Rodriguez. He is fully healthy. I know it's easy to be concerned about the lat strain moving forward, but with all the knowledge we have right now, Grayson is healthy. He's going to pitch in spring, and I think he's ready to make and have a big breakout. Just given what we've seen, the pitch data, there's a lot to like in this profile. So let's break it down. Rodriguez, obviously a former first-round pick, 11th overall, one of the top pitching prospects in the game, and now I think is the time we see him take that step forward. He just turned 25 years old this offseason. Usually, with pitchers, it takes a little bit longer for them to develop and transition to the majors. Not often do we see pitchers like Paul Skeens just jump and dominate off the bat. Now, Skeens is a bit of an enigma, but most pitching prospects take time to adjust. I think that's exactly what we began to see last year with G-Rod, and the results were coming with it. So I'm looking at what he did last year. What worked, what didn't, what pitch data stood out, and why he can be successful. Now, let's talk about the arsenal. Rodriguez relies pretty heavily on the fastball. He did see a decreased usage there last year, which was notable. 50% usage in 2023 on the four-seam. That was down to 46.5. Not a super big drop, but it is noticeable. He also saw the velocity dip, which I think was probably a sign of the lat strain, given that we saw the fastball drop from 97.5 miles an hour in 2023 down to 96 miles an hour in 2022. And if we look at the month-by-month breakdown of the fastball from last year, it is actually kind of interesting. Did he pitch with a not 100% lat or shoulder? It's possible. I'm looking at the four-seam average, and in April it was 96.3. In May it was 96.1. June, 96.2. And then in July when he got injured, 95.7. That's a big dip from what we had seen in 2023, and obviously pretty notable. So that's at least worth looking at off the bat. But the fastball did perform better despite the drop in velocity. Now, why is that? Why did his fastball actually improve? Why did it have a 27% whiff rate, which is pretty solid? Well, I think it starts with the uniqueness of that pitch. One, he threw it for strikes more. He threw it in the zone and located it better. If you look at the heat map that I'm dropping below, the four-seam location was much better in 2024 as compared to 2023. So naturally, it got more whiffs. You look at the pitch profile of it and how it played. You look at the raw IVB number, it's like, okay, it's around 16 inches of IVB. That's fine. But then you go and look at his release height, 5'5" inches. Here's the important thing. Everybody talks about raw IVB numbers, and they never include release height. IVB is a rolling scale based on release height. So looking at this IVB for Grayson Rodriguez, around 16 inches, you look at the average IVB from that release height, and it's around 14.5 inches. So G-Rod's got about 1.5 inches IVB over average that are expected from his release height. So obviously out of the gate, that's pretty notable. He was up to 99.3, which is still encouraging. He gets 13 inches of horizontal movement on that pitch, so it's good horizontal. He lived in the zone at a much better rate last year, and the vertical approach angle on it is really impressive. He had a negative 4.2 vertical approach angle, which you may ask, what exactly does that mean? Well, vertical approach angle is how flat the pitch is, and the lower the number, the better. So with the fastball, anything around -4 is really, really good. If we pull up the pitch data, in comparison to other pitches, he ranks in the 90th percentile, according to Pitcher List, who has great player pages, great data, and they tier it according to other starting pitchers in the majors. So G-Rod's -4.2 VAA, 90th percentile for all major league arms. 7'3" of extension. That's also elite. I would find him in the 97th percentile for all major league arms. So the fastball is a really good pitch and it sets everything up. Despite how much he uses it, it works and he misses bats with it. And I think that's really important. That was a big progression last season. So then we've got the fastball. The usage was interesting. He began to use it a little more early on. He relied on it a little more heavily in May and June. And actually in July, that usage dropped back down to 44%. So it's going to be something to watch because he used his changeup much more in July last year. Was that just a comfortability thing? If the shoulder wasn't 100%, I don't know, but it is worth looking at with Grayson Rodriguez. So then let's talk about the changeup. Changeup's a really good pitch as well. Second most used pitch, 21% usage on that pitch, sitting 83 miles an hour, but it does have some pretty unique traits with it that stand out. Now, it has kind of a late drop and it has heavy horizontal fade, around 12 inches of fade on that pitch. He throws it for strikes often. A 67% strike rate on the changeup is really, really good. He had a swinging strike rate on that of 19.75% and a whiff rate of 35%. Both those marks stand out in a big way. It's a tough pitch for hitters to pick up on, given the traits. Again, he's getting heavy extension on it. And he's playing exceptionally well with the fastball, given that late drop and fade, because obviously it's not completely mimicking. It would mimic the sinker a little more. G-Rod doesn't throw a sinker much. He used it just a couple times last year. But that changeup does play exceptionally well. Then we go to the slider usage. It was kind of interesting because we saw kind of a distinction where G-Rod was throwing more of a sweeper in 2023, and it was more of a traditional shaped slider in 2024. So that was obviously interesting to look at. It was, I want to call it kind of a gyro slider where it's about 2 inches of IVB, but it does have a little more horizontal than your typical gyro, so it's probably falls in the bucket of more of a traditional slider shape. About 5.5 inches of horizontal movement on that pitch. It's fascinating because if you go look at the movement profile of his pitches in 2023, he was throwing that sweeper with about 11 to 12 inches of break, and we didn't see that pitch much in 2024. So obviously that's interesting to look at too. The slider did play well overall. It had a 36% whiff rate. It's set around 86.5 miles an hour. It got up to 91, which is pretty impressive. The other thing is he landed it for strikes. He's landing all of his pitches for strikes, which is pretty notable. It's from that lower release height. It makes it a tough read. It has a 36% chase rate on the slider, which is very high number. And the zone percentage, pretty good too. I mean, like you talk about a 39% zone usage, that's good. I mean, look at the heat map that I'm going to drop below on the slider. You can see how well G-Rod located it. Curveball was more inconsistent. He did throw that curveball a little more this year. It went from 8% usage in 2023 up to 15.5% usage in 2024. Now, the curveball had its moments where it was really good, but it also allowed a 260 batting average against. I know batting average against on particular pitch types can be fluky, but it is interesting to see. And ultimately, that was one of the lower whiff rates. It was actually the lowest whiff rate of any of his pitches. So something to look at there. Why is the curveball getting hit and not missing bats? Because honestly, like the movement profile is pretty good on the curveball. You look at it, it sits in the low 80s, around 81, up to 84. It's a high spinning pitch, 27,500 RPMs. And you're talking about good IVB, negative 10 inches of IVB, and sweep too. So it's a 2-plane break curveball with negative 8 inches of sweeping action. But why did it then not miss bats? At an 8.9% swinging strike rate, which is really low. That whiff rate I mentioned at 24.5% is not great for a secondary at all. Again, the strike rate was still good on it, but here's the issue. I believe the zone rate was a little higher than you want to see, and you look at where he dropped the curveball in the zone, and oftentimes like he left it over the heart of the plate. Like not all of his curveballs were hanging, but a lot of those are hanging, as you can see in this heat map right here that I've dropped below. So the curveball location will need to be cleaned up, but I think that will be a big hinge on him taking that next step. We've got 3 whiff pitches. The four-seam is a great whiff pitch comparative to other four-seamers. Changeup, really high whiff numbers. Slider, really high whiff numbers. And I'd love to see that curveball take the next step for Grayson Rodriguez to ultimately see, can he have 4 true pitches that miss bats? I think it comes down to just location there. The movement profile, I really like. It has traits where I look at it and I say, okay, like there's certainly some things to like here. And I really think that he could see it take off. For what it's worth, it is one of the lower rated Stuff Plus pitches. Eno Saris's model just updated. on Fangraphs. You can check that out. Here's how his pitch is graded out. Grayson Rodriguez fastball, 107. So the four-seam 107, that was right in line with 2023, so still a really, really good offering. That's a nearest standard deviation above the average fastball, so that's really solid. You look at the sinker that he doesn't throw often, but 108, really good. Slider, 108. Curveball, 98, so slightly below average. I think it has a lot to do with the location ultimately. That definitely factors in here because the traits are good. I mean, like he checks some boxes with the curveball that you like to see. And then the changeup had a 113 stuff plus. All this led to a 107 overall stuff plus and a 107 pitching plus, or a location plus. The crazy thing is that factors to a 113 pitching plus. How good is that? Well, it's nearly 1.5 standard deviations above average. When we go look at the leaders last year from Stuff Plus, this is qualified starters, and then I'll filter to just 100 innings because you lose some people when you get the qualified starters. So if you looked at qualified starters, Grayson Rodriguez would come in at 4th, ahead of Tariq Skubal on pitching plus. That 113, Skubal was 112, Zach Wheeler 114, Dylan Cease 114, Corbin Burns 119. On the Stuff Plus, just pure stuff side of things, G-Rod's 107 comes in right at 8th overall. Names ahead of him, pretty good. Corbin Burns, Dylan Cease, Tariq Skubal, Carlos Rodon, Zach Wheeler, Cole Reagans, and Luis Severino, which is kind of a fascinating name there too. So let's filter it to 100 innings because you get most every starter. You add in a lot more guys. So where does G-Rod rank? So Stuff Plus of starting pitchers, or I'll just general pitchers with 100 innings. Most are all starters. Most relievers aren't going 100. He would rank tied for 13th on Stuff Plus, 107. That's tied with Tyler Glass now, who has elite stuff. That's tied with Luis Hill, who won Rookie of the Year, Aaron Nola, Ryan Pepio. So those are some good names. I like Pepio a lot to break out too this year. I may do a video on Pepio next because I like him a lot. Pitching Plus. I mentioned G-Rod coming in 6th, tied for 6th with Spencer Schwellenbach. Burns, Skeens, Crochet, Cease, and Wheeler are the ones ahead of him with 100 innings. That's wild. Like, the stuff is certainly there with Grayson Rodriguez. There's no doubt about it. He can pitch, locate. The command and strike throwing improvements are very notable for Grayson Rodriguez, and he's got the stuff to take off. So, like, what do projections think of him? Obviously, like, we look at the projection models. What do they think of him? Because, those do matter. I will say they take historical performance into account. So you look at his 2023 Major League sample of a 4.35 whip or ERA and a 1.34 whip. It's going to hurt him projection-wise a little bit. I will say, Oopsie's projection by Jordan Rosenblum, if folds in Stuff Plus, it is by far his best projection. So Oopsie projection projects him at a 159 innings, which that's certainly reasonable. I don't see why he couldn't give us 160, a 3.43 ERA, and a 1.19 whip with a 26% strikeout rate. It's by far the highest and best projection for him. The bat, 3.96 ERA across 158 innings, 24.7% strikeout rate. We look at Steamers at 3.68 ERA, and all the others are around 3.72 to 3.77. All the projection models project him to be significantly better minus the bat, and I certainly agree. I almost believe I'm buying into the Oopsie projection much more with G-Rod. A 3.43 looks much more like what I would expect given the pitch level data, how good it is, the strikeout rate, the walk rate. Those are all really good. All the ERA indicators last year stuck right in line. We look at the xERA, 3.72. He had a 3.86 ERA last year, 3.72, 3.66 FIP, 3.57 xFIP. All these indicators I look at, and they're suggesting that G-Rod should have performed better. I believe that this is a major breakout this year. I'm very excited for Grayson Rodriguez. He's 25 years old. He's got the pedigree. He's got the arm talent. He's got to stay healthy. And if he does, he might be a top 10 pitcher by season's end. Would not shock me a bit. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe below. Help me grow the channel. And if you enjoy it, like and comment. Tell me what you think of Grayson Rodriguez. Appreciate it, everybody. Hope you have a great day.